Ari, good afternoon.
Good to hear from you. How are you?
Good.
We're doing fantastic.
How are you, Ari?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Guys, I tell you, I'd have a bad day if this isn't a once a month occurrence for me. But you guys are just on the brunt of it today. So I'm doing great.
Good.
You know, the one thing that I will tell you is that if I write something and people don't react to it, or people don't call me names, or don't come after me, that's a worse feeling than when everybody's mad. So I live in a world where I write columns, and sometimes people agree, sometimes they don't. But my goal is to elicit emotion, I should say, and it worked. So I'm happy to be here.
Obviously, a lot has changed even since we booked you yesterday, because you had a chance to talk to Matt Rhule. You've done your show, on 3, your daily show, and so you've had a chance to kind of absorb all the input from this, and also hear from the person you wrote about in Matt Rhule. I'm curious how you look at this situation today versus where it was 24 hours ago.
No differently, because I feel pretty confident with every single letter that was in that in that column. I still feel the same way. I wrote it, and when Matt called me, I told him. And the funniest thing about this is that what Matt was upset about more than anything was that I didn't call him beforehand to tell him it was coming. And the thing that I explained to him that I said, being a college football columnist for 15 years, like, this was a 2 out of 10 on the aggressive scale. Like, I didn't in my head think that this was going anywhere. Especially if you go read the column, and I hope you guys did, but if you didn't, I'll tell you,
Absolutely
it's pretty benign. It's pretty benign. I don't know that you come away with that. Maybe if the headline or the circumstances were a little bit different, I don't think you come away with that feeling all that angry. So, I think that it was a messed up situation, because people came into the column with the preconceived notion that the On3 main account misrepresented what he said, or that I didn't understand that he was joking, and that's not at all what happened. So when people get mad at me or freak out over things and they're not quite sure what they're angry about, it's kind of hard to engage in those. I mean, I try to argue with people online. It just doesn't go anywhere. So to get to a point in my life where I don't argue with people who are just mad for the sake of being mad. But I'll ask you guys, you're in Nebraska, you're in Omaha. Did I write anything that you didn't agree with?
No, and Ari, that is the funniest part, because I saw the headline and I was like, holy God, he is about to light this place on fire. And you did, but not for the reasons I thought you were, because then I went into the story, and I'll be honest, and I know John would be as well, you said a lot of the same things that we said about the Tennessee cancellation when it originally went down. And so I guess I found it interesting that it seemed like that had been very much on your mind, and the quotes that he had to Sean Callahan and Steve Sipple was maybe the entry point for you to kind of re-engage with that. That's
absolutely right. And also, too, he made a joke about the 40-team playoff, but I didn't write about the 40-team playoff. I wrote the entire quote of everything that he said in the story, and he was very pro further. I've been against expansion from 4 to 12, let alone 12 to 16 to 23 to whatever. I don't want it to season. So, that's my mindset is, whenever I hear anybody say we shouldn't play tough games against tough opponents, regardless of whether or not they're even rational about it, I find it soft. So, and the thing about it, too, is that, Matt Rhule told me on the phone last night, I'm assuming that if you guys were there and speak with him, that the number one concern that he has is equity. And that equity is, playing the same amount of games. He's not afraid to play anybody, but he wants everybody to play the same amount. And I understand that from his perspective. You play in the second most difficult conference in the country. You want to play the same, number of conference games as you see right now. That's not the case. But let me tell you, I said this on the show, and I'll say it here. I don't think that Nebraska is interested in trading schedules with a lot of people in the SEC, even if they play one less conference game. And funny enough, and you guys might find out this the hard way, I look at your schedule this year, Nebraska's schedule. I see a team that could potentially win 10 games this year. Mm-hmm. And you know what would really help them? If they had a really awesome non-conference game that they won. Because at the end of the year, if they go 10-2, and their non-conference is Akron and Houston Baptist, you kind of might want to wish that you beat Colorado this year, or somebody that's going to, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a really good year and all of a sudden you're like, crap, I wish we played that extra game. So, I don't know. I think that in the column I wrote this, I think that Nebraska is in much better hands and in much better position as a program, as an institution, and as a team as a result of Matt Rhule being there. I have a lot of respect for Matt Rhule, what he's done, the fact that he's able to get a 5-star player like Dylan Raiola to go there and spurn Ohio State and Georgia. Like, there's a lot of things there to like. And I happen to disagree with one thing or two things that he said in the last 2 months. Doesn't mean that I think he's a dirtbag or that he's not a good coach or that I hate Nebraska or whatever other fantasies people want to contrive. I have a disagreement on anybody who asserts those things, including Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, who said that stupid stuff in November, and I wrote a column then too. So,
yeah,
that's the thing that's so funny to me about the whole thing. Be mad. Go ahead. Be mad. Call me names, whatever. Read the thing. It's really not that bad.
As you mentioned, and Ari Wasserman joining us from On3 Sports, you talked with Rhule last night. How would you, was it a cordial conversation, and did you come to any kind of an understanding?
Yeah, Matt is a rational, good dude. And you guys know this about him. You're not learning anything from me. And if you think about the things that Matt Rhule has been through in his career, he took over a Baylor after a rape scandal. He got fired from the NFL. You think that this registers in terms of hard days for this man? What I wrote? Come on. So I think what he was upset about more than anything was that he didn't see it coming. He said, if you want to write something about me in the future, go ahead. I know it's part of the deal. It's part of the job. He gets paid handsomely to deal with this sort of thing. And it's our job as journalists and columnists to keep people accountable or to share our opinions about these things. He'd like a heads up. And what I told him was I didn't think it was going to be anything that would even be on his radar, let alone getting to the extent that it was. And I think part of the reason why it got to that extent is because people are upset about the On3 main account. They linked my column to that, and they thought that I was being disingenuous, and that's not at all what I think happened, and I stand by my work.
Yeah, Ari, I don't want to put you in like an awkward position, right? Like it'd be like if somebody asked me about something the Zone account did on Twitter that I had nothing to do with. But I wonder how, like, that obviously played such a big part in the entire story yesterday because it was a week and a half old interview that kind of blew up. And it's the only
reason I saw it. I didn't
exactly
even see it 10 days ago.
Yeah. So like, how have you kind of dealt with that? Where again, I imagine you're going to toe the company line, and you should. But like that, of course, was a huge part of the story, and I think a lot of the frustration was with that, and then people took it out on you.
I think that people have to understand that social media is a really important aspect to, the continued growth of companies and thought processes. And I don't know that On3 was trying to do anything malicious or to make him look bad or I think that people like to think the worst of everybody. And I think it was a funny comment, and they posted the comment. And I think it's weird that it happened 9 days later. I don't know what goes on with the gulag there. But I don't think that the nefarious things that people think were happening there were meant to be. And honestly speaking, guys, too, you heard the rest of the quote. He might have been joking about the 40 teams, but he did say in the quote that he's all for as many as possible. And I just disagree with that. So, I understand why people could be upset, or if they think that words are being twisted or that I'm too stupid to figure out that he was joking, despite the fact that I wrote that he was joking 3 times in the story. Like, that's fine. But again, all I'm saying is make the team better. That's what you're doing. You got progress. You got a great trajectory. Keep going. And guess what? If Indiana can make it, you guys can make it. And you know what? You might even do it as soon as this year. So, I'm not the bad guy here. And if you want to paint me out to be the enemy, then go ahead. But, I think that for the most ironic thing about this whole thing is that I'm the enemy of the entire Big Red Nation, and at the same time never said anything that no one even disagrees with to begin with. So, it's just the way it goes in this business, and I'm flattered that people care enough to read what I have to say or to listen to what I think.
Ari Wasserman of On3 Sports, obviously, and you stressed this earlier, you weren't for playoff expansion in the first place, but we know we already have it. How concerned are you about quotas, about conferences getting so many bids every playoff? Is that an even worse step than just general expansion in your mind?
Well, the thing is that we can't continue to pretend like certain conferences aren't more difficult than others. And the problem is this sport is so stupid, and the television executives are so greedy that we have conferences that are too big and don't make sense geographically, and thus we get to a position where you have these conferences where teams don't even play each other. So sometimes we even have a hard time crowning the correct champion because the schedules aren't equitable and the teams don't play each other. Like, for instance, like the SEC last year had 6 teams tied for second, like going into the final weekend, and it's just like that's not supposed to happen because they're supposed to be playing each other and they're not. So you want to create the most spots for the teams in the conferences that have the most talent and the most good teams, but at the same time too that's a moving target. Not every year everything's the same. So like I understand why they're doing it, but when you get to 16 guys, like if you can't get into this, I think that people lose sight. Race is making the playoff, and like people separate making the playoff and the privilege of playing for a title. And it's like at a certain point you got to cut that out. And it's like we're going to get to 16 with automatic bigs next year, and like you don't think we're going to be on the phone in 5 years talking about 24? Like, are you naive enough to think that? How are we going to go before and try to save this season? I want Matt Rhule to play the best possible non-conference games that he can, and I want the games to matter the most that they can. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to think. So, and you know what? Nebraska fans probably feel the same way. Don't you want to watch a good game, or are you guys all fired up for the Houston Baptist game that does nothing for you?
Yeah, you are absolutely preaching to the choir on that one. Ari, I'm curious. I heard from a listener last night, and he said it continues to baffle me how national media continues to look to a 500 coach for views on the current college football landscape. So I think this person is maybe a bit more cynical or frustrated with the Matt Rhule experience so far. How would you answer that? Why does Rhule make waves, or why did he maybe make waves with you given his record, quote unquote, isn't warranting of it like a Kirby Smart, Dabo Sweeney, et cetera, et cetera?
I think Matt Rhule is right in the eye of the storm in terms of the types of in the playoff that are separated a little bit from the Ohio State and Georgias, right? Like when you think about it, it's like, who are the only people's opinions that we care about? Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart and Ryan Day? Or do we care about people who have built multiple programs, coached in the NFL, and are trying to create recreate one of the most storied and prideful programs in America? Like his record has nothing to do with it. He's the head coach in Nebraska, and if you're a Nebraska fan who can't see that, then Lord help you.
Ari Wasserman of On3 Sports. If you could concoct right now perfect playoff, wave your magic wand, what are we doing?
I have a hard time with this because I want the regular season to matter, but I also am a sucker for the debate and the rage that the committee creates. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like I actually revel in the Tuesday night playoff rankings reveal, and I love watching the inconsistencies drive people crazy. And like I feel like the NFL is very fun and entertaining. I know you guys don't have a team there, but I'm sure you guys have your NFL teams, and that's great. But like I don't want college football to be like the NFL. I want it to be fair and equitable to the best that it can be while also remaining completely insane. So like to me, I think the most obvious way to maybe do this would be is automatic bids for every conference champion, and then like 7 at-larges or 5 at-larges or whatever to make a 10 or an 18 playoff. But even that doesn't really make any sense because the sport is changing dramatically, and like the current playoffs would have been, they didn't mess up the conferences.
Yep.
It's like when the Pac-12 existed, it was perfect. That's what it was created for. We have a system that is designed for 5 power conferences, and you only have 3. If you want to count the Big 12, go for it, but you know that that's a rung below. So if you still had the Pac-12 and Texas and Oklahoma were still in the Big 12, and you had, the 4 automatic bids and the highest rated, G5 team, like you would have it all covered there. But the problem is that we keep trying to change the playoff system when conference realignment is in constant flux. It's like, do we realize that we're having all these conversations about what the playoff should look like and how perfect it should be? In the meantime, the ACC is not going to exist in 7 years. Like, are we there yet? Like, do we know that? Like, we constantly change things in the wrong order, and I guess that's part of the dysfunction of the sport and the charm of it. But like, the thing is that my perfect scenario doesn't even matter because there's no such thing as making anything perfect. Even the reseeding that they announced today, where they're going to seed it straight, is going to have inherent flaws when the number 1 seed has to play number 9 Alabama, when we all know that they'll be ranked 9 in the polls, but not the NFL, and we can't make it the NFL. And I thought 12 was probably a little bit too much, but now that there's more, NIL money and transferring happening, kind of flattening the curve of who's bad and who's good, 5 conferences, and then do this system, that would probably actually be my perfect system, I just miss the Pac-12, guys. I'm a West Coast kid that grew up watching it, and it just sucks that it doesn't exist. And it sucks that Stanford's in the ACC, and it sucks that Arizona State is in the Big 12, and it certainly sucks that Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC. And I don't know, again, if that's a controversial opinion or if everyone's just like, I wish we could go back where geography mattered, because that's what made college football special in the first place.
Ari couldn't agree with you more. Ari Wasserman on 3 Sports. We really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for the time. And, well, we'll see who you fire up next time when you put your pen to paper.
GBR people to leave me alone, man. I just want to spend some time with my family tonight, okay? I don't need any.
Hey, there is no group that's better online than Husker Nation, man. They will either attack you or they will love you in mass.
I know you guys have a pretty big show and a lot of people listening to you. I don't know how I came across, but I was at least glad to hear that you read the story and you didn't really seem all that inflamed by it. And hopefully, people will read it and see if their own opinions on it. So,
Ari, as Josh mentioned earlier, you struck a nerve with us too because we've been talking about this for the last couple of months. We're not happy with non-conference games not mattering, and we don't like having to expand the playoffs for everybody and creating
and I know
quotas.
You have to go. But the funniest thing that could possibly happen from my perspective, and won't be funny from your perspective and the people listening, but last year, the way that they beat Colorado on national television and Dylan Raiola was airing it out and the entire country was watching Nebraska football in a non-conference game, and it was awesome. And I know you guys remember it because it was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
What if not playing that game or a game like it this year is the reason their schedule is not strong enough to get into the playoff? How ironic would that be given what Matt Rhule said in February? Because I think that the biggest misnomer about this whole thing is that you add these games and it gives you a higher likelihood to win when you should be asking, why aren't we playing these games? Because the number one thing the committee has constantly proven time and time again is their number one metric is strength of schedule and quality wins. And the less opportunity you have to get those, it's actually more harmful for you than putting yourself in a position where you may not lose. And who's afraid of losing?
Yeah, Ari,
Which brings us back to the column.
Yeah, it's like last year, Indiana. Like everyone took the wrong lessons from Indiana. The lesson is not, wow, look, they got in with a weak schedule. It was they had to walk such a fine line of winning 11 of 12 games, and even then they were still at the bottom of the seeding to get into the playoffs.
And Indiana was also the beneficiary of the fact that the SEC was complete nonsense last year. If Oklahoma wouldn't have beaten Alabama, they'd be sitting at home with you guys.
Correct.
That's right.
Correct.
I think that people lose sight. They take the exception to the rule. And they go, well, that happened, so that's what's always going to happen. No, you want to go into November with no quality wins and a good record, keep doing it and see how it goes. I mean, if it goes to 16, maybe it'll be a little bit easier. But, I think that there's far more to gain from winning big games, both as program development, program stature, program reputation, and resume enhancer than there is losing a highly contested game against a really talented team early on in the season. And the bottom line is if you want to win a national championship, you got to get better either way. So just get better. And that's the column. And if you disagree with that, that's great, but I think it's very rational and not hateful at all.
Ari Wasserman on 3 Sports. Ari, have a great weekend. Thanks a lot for your time.
And thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
You're welcome.
And be well.
Thank you, Ari.